Okay, we're going to do a recipe today that's based on a Spanish tortilla. This is going to be one of a series of recipes that are based on 5 key factors. They need to be cheap, tasty, nutritious, foolproof and scalable. So before we start, there are 2 things to do. The first one is wash your hands, and the second one is preheat the oven. So I'm going to cook this in the oven today, and we're going to preheat the oven to 180 degrees centigrade. Conversions for that will be on your screen right now. So there we go. Oven is preheating. Okay, let's talk about the cheap and nutritious aspects of this recipe. So it's based on eggs, which are very nutritious, full of iron, calcium, B vitamins, protein, all sorts of good stuff. And we're just going to use vegetables to bulk it out. So I've got a nice big potato, a courgette, you may know that as a zucchini, a small onion, a couple of small sweet peppers, and a tomato. You can really vary the vegetables that you put in here. So instead of a zucchini, we could have butternut squash, sweet potato, we could have a cup full of frozen peas, really anything you like. The key ingredients here are the onion for flavour, but you could replace that with spring onions, leeks, a bit of garlic maybe, and the eggs obviously. You need the eggs to bind it all together. So let's get started. So I'm going to be cutting the onions into smallish pieces, not fine dice, just maybe a little bit bigger than matchstick size pieces. I've got a large bowl, onion goes into the bowl. Next up my peppers, and we'll just de-seed those. Okay, so the peppers, again we're going to cut them into smallish, maybe matchstick sized chunks. It doesn't have to be very precise at all here. This is what makes it easy. And into the bowl with the onions. Next, my courgette. We're just going to chop the ends off of this. Now it's quite a big courgette, so in the middle it's going to have some watery, seedy matter. So I'm just going to quarter that lengthways, and now grab a spoon. I'm just going to scrape out the middle here. It should just come out nice and easy. Let's just have a look at that so you can see it. So the spoon just goes in there, and you'll find it'll hit the solid flesh of the courgette and resist. Right, and the more solid part of the courgette here we'll just chop up into pieces that are the size of maybe twice the thickness of a matchstick. I guess that's about the thickness of a chopstick, let's say. That goes into the bowl with the other vegetables. Next, the potato. Now, unless it's really filthy and scabby, it doesn't need peeling. We'll just give it a quick wash. We'll keep the skin on because, again, there are nutrients in the skin that we'll miss out on if we peel it. So I'm just cutting my potato into, again, chopstick thickness pieces like that, and then we'll cut them again this way, so they're kind of like French fries but thin, and cut them into chunks that way. Potato into the dish. Finally, the tomato. Here I'm going to get a teaspoon and just remove those seeds out the middle there. But we're really only interested in the fleshy part of the tomato. And we'll just chop up again into the same size pieces. Simplicity is the key here. Just get rid of those seeds. Okay, and my tomatoes go into the dish as well. So now I've got a dish full of chopped vegetables in various colours. Now it's time to add the rest of the ingredients. So the rest of our ingredients are some dried mixed herbs. I'll just put about half a teaspoonful in there. I'll discuss at the end. You can replace all of the flavourings. A lot of the ingredients in this recipe are interchangeable, so this is a dish that can be adapted to lots of different flavours, lots of different textures and so on. We'll talk about that a bit at the end. So next up we've got 1 cup of plain flour. This is an actual cup measure, but It doesn't need to be, you can just use a teacup for that. That goes straight in the bowl. And I've got 3 eggs. Now with the eggs, so that we don't end up eating any shell, well, whoops, like that, we'll crack them into a glass so that we can make sure we're not eating any fragments of shell. And with a fork, we'll just give those a little mix up, just to break up the yolks and break them up a tiny bit. Okay, and that goes in on top as well. Finally, we'll just put a pinch of salt in there. A pinch of salt, literally the amount of salt you can put between forefinger and thumb if it's dry. Just a pinch of salt in there. And then we're going to just mix this through. So the moisture from the vegetables and the egg will bind it all together, and it will make a sort of a batter around the vegetables. We just keep on mixing it like this. It will look a bit unpromising and lumpy to start with. Be quiet, Eva. But as we move on, you can see that the flour is starting to moisten from the moisture from the vegetables. It's all starting to mix together rather nicely. And what we've got is a kind of almost like a batter coating on each little piece of the vegetables. There we go. Look at how that's coming together now. That's turning into a sort of a batter. That's good. Now, we've mixed our vegetables together. We could just cook it like that, but might be a little bit dull and uninteresting. So we're just going to give it one more last ingredient, or maybe a couple of last ingredients, just to give it a little boost of flavour. Now, for this, there's all kinds of things you could add. We could add some nice cheese, we could add some ham, we could add a bit of salami, we could open a tin of anchovy fillets and dump those in there. We could add, let's have a look, just really raid the fridge, and here we go. Look, so we could raid the fridge and use these snack salamis. There's any number of things. You've got leftover chicken, leftover sausages that have been cooked, anything like that can be chopped up, dumped in there, mixed through, give it a bit of extra flavour. I was going to do ham and cheese, but I think actually I'm going to use some leftover sausages. I've got these lovely sausages here, which are left over from yesterday's brunch, and I'm just going to halve them lengthways like that. So we'll just chop them into smallish pieces into our dish. Now we could have put those in with the vegetables, but sometimes these flavouring ingredients are a little bit fragile. Not so with sausages, but if I was chopping up pieces of ham, I might find that actually if I put them in at the start, by the time I've mixed them through, they'd be broken into small pieces. So better to put those in right near the end and just mix them through. Right, so that's now mixed and ready. So any kind of oven-proof dish will do for this, but I've just picked one that I know that this will tip into, and it will form a layer that's maybe 3/4 of an inch deep to an inch deep. We'll just put a little splash of oil in there and just rub that around the dish to help that to release when it's finished cooking. So there we go, just oiled the dish. Ingredients unceremoniously dumped in there like so. Let's make sure we scrape the dish and get value for money out of all of those ingredients. Get every last little piece out. Okay, and then we just press it down. Press it down all over the place like that. And then this is going to go into our oven on the middle shelf, and we'll set a timer for 40 minutes. So time's up. Let's have a look at how it's done. There we are, look at that. Now we can test that just to check that it's done with a sharp knife, just by poking in there, just to make sure the potatoes and everything all cook through, and it feels good. So I'm just going to set that aside to cool down for a little bit before we serve. So let's cut a wedge of this and have a taste. So, first piece is a little bit messy, but you know, that's to be expected sometimes with these sorts of things. Let's have a little taste. Really nice, lots of flavours in there, quite a few different textures. Really tastes quite substantial and hearty. So our 5 objectives for this meal were: cheap. It's cheap, it's made of vegetables and eggs, it's probably less than 4 or 5 pounds to feed 4 portions. It's tasty, there's loads of flavour, texture, lots of adaptability in there for different flavours. It's nutritious, it's got eggs, loads of vegetables. Eggs are packed with vitamins and minerals. It's foolproof, you really can't go wrong with this. As long as you just follow those steps, mix it all together and bake it, it's going to work. And it's scalable. You could just use 1 egg and 1/3 of all the ingredients we've seen today and you'd have a smaller pie. Or you could just let this cool and cut a wedge of it to take to work or college with you cold. You can reheat it in the microwave. So you can cook this ahead of time, and there's 4 or 5 meals in there for a person cooking alone. And it can also be frozen. Once it's been cooked, you could just chop that into portions, freeze it, and then thaw out a piece when you need it. So let's just talk about a few other things we can do with this recipe to adapt it. So instead of the mixed herbs we could put in curry powder. We could put in chili flakes. Instead of the sausage, we discussed that earlier, we could put in anchovies, a can of drained tuna, a couple of rashers of bacon chopped into small pieces, cheese, any number of tasty ingredients chopped into the right size pieces, just mixed in, would make this into a different dish. In terms of vegetables, there's a great deal of different things you could put in there instead of the vegetables we used. So instead of the zucchini, we could use butternut squash, we could have used mushrooms in there, we could have used any number of frozen vegetables, green beans, pretty much any vegetables. Mix it up a bit and try different things. So there we go. I hope that's been fun, and I hope you try this and I hope you enjoy it. So thanks for watching, and I hope to see you next time.